Hey everybody, it's Drew Schneider at Drew's Home Team Your Castle Real Estate. And the question of the month is, as a buyer, how do I compete in this market? As you probably know, the inventory is very, very, very low, which means that the high demand we already had, the competition is even hotter for the homes that are available. So I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks that I use with my clients, and hopefully that will help you in your journey, or I'm happy to help you myself, of course. The very first thing we're going to talk about is pre-approval. It is absolutely crucial. Don't even do anything else unless you do this first. You have to be pre-approved with a strong local lender before you go shopping. In this market, you cannot even compete without that. In a full pre-approval, a good, strong lender is going to look at all of your documentation, tax returns, pay stubs, all of those things, including pulling credit and getting a full picture of your situation. That's the only way to do this. And once they've looked at everything, they'll say, hey, this is a good range for you price-wise. This is what your payment looks like. And then the buyer and the lender talk about it and say, well, the payment's a little bit high, so why don't we just keep it under this price? And then we know, and then we can set a parameter for our search and go shopping. But I've been doing this for 19 years, 19 years. And I can tell you that anytime that a client of mine does not use one of my preferred local lenders, there's a problem, a significant problem. So I can't stress this enough. Get pre-approved with a strong local lender. And then the second thing is lots of little things we can do within the offer and within the contract process to help your contract get approved, and accepted by the seller. There are lots of offers on the table for most properties right now, anywhere from 10 to 20. I just saw one yesterday. It was 15 offers. They'll be selling way over list price. So I'm going to quickly run down a few of the tips and tricks that I use and my agents use, in order to strengthen the offer that the buyer is submitting. You can write a love letter to the sellers. Most sellers and listing agents will not look at that these days because the love letter has a lot of potential fair housing violations. As from the buyer's side, we can certainly submit one, but we can't guarantee that the listing agent will pass it on to the seller. So just be aware of that. It's very important that me, the buyer's agent, communicates effectively with the listing agent, and as well as the lender communicating with the listing agent. All of my preferred lenders will call the listing agent as soon as the offer is submitted, regardless if it's on the weekend or it's in the evening or whenever. And they will give the listing agent just enough information so that they feel comfortable that they've looked at everything and the buyer is good to go. That is crucial. It's amazing from the listing agent side of things how many times this does not happen. So happens every single time with every buyer I have, and that's a must do. Another thing is effective communication between myself and the listing agent, as I mentioned. And it's important to be communicative, but not pushy and overbearing. And there's a certain rapport that can develop between a buyer's agent and a listing agent just within that first phone call that can help beat out another offer if they're feeling a little squirrely about that agent. So that definitely helps. A strong offer price is a given. You're going to be most likely offering over list price on virtually any property out there. It's just the way of the market because the inventory is so low. Using an escalation clause, this really depends on the property. And an escalation clause just means, hey, we'll give you $400,000 for this property, but we'll give you up to $415,000 if there's another offer that's higher than ours. So it has a built-in escalation to go up to a certain value. In some properties, some agents do not want to see escalation clauses for whatever reason. Maybe it's the seller's prerogative, maybe it's the listing agent's ability to manage the process, but we will certainly navigate that as we go forward. One of the main things that is very prevalent right now is appraisal gap coverage. And this has been turned into a commonly used term over the last few years. And what it is let's say a house is listed at 400,000. You submit an offer and get accepted at 415,000. Well, the lender is only going to lend up to 400,000 where we assume it's going to appraise. It may appraise higher than that, but for this illustration, let's just assume that we think it'll appraise at 400,000, but you're under contract at 415. Somebody has to make up that gap. If you're going to overbid, the seller doesn't want to take any responsibility for that. So the buyer will want to tell the seller, hey, listen, we're going to tell you up front that we're going to cover most or all of that gap. And by covering that gap, the buyer has to have extra cash to do it. So that may mean looking at your down payment, maybe lowering your down payment a little bit to have more cash available for the appraisal gap coverage. That is absolutely crucial these days. If you don't do it, don't bother buying a house in this environment. It's too competitive. Next thing is inspection. We can limit the things that we're going to ask the seller for potentially at the inspection time. And maybe you only focus on the roof and sewer line because those are big ticket items. I've seen plenty of times where the buyer completely eliminates the inspection objection deadline altogether, which means they may keep their ability to terminate the contract due to the inspection, but they're not going to ask the seller to fix anything. And then, of course, I see no inspection clauses at all. Obviously, there's some risk involved there. It would definitely depend on the property and the buyer's willingness and risk tolerance to maybe take on some of those repairs himself. But just know that that's definitely a thing we can do. Put as much money down as you can. There's statistically no difference in the fallout rate of a deal between an FHA loan with 3.5% down and a conventional loan with 20% down or cash. But in the minds and perception of the seller and the listing agent, it can still strengthen your offer. Having earnest money be non-refundable after a certain period of time can also help. And then if the sellers will likely need extra time after the closing to stay in their home, so that's considered a rent back. And most of the time in this competitive market, that rent back is being offered to the sellers for free. So you need to account for that as well. And there's a few other tips and tricks that I use and my agents use to help our clients get under contract. Everyone we've worked with is getting under contract. It does take some work, but you have to have a really, really good team in place to support you. And that includes myself, anyone on my team, a strong local lender, and then putting all of our efforts together to make sure that you, the buyer, can get under contract. So I know this is a long video, but I think it was really important to cover all this information today. There's definitely lots of scenarios and nuances that we would want to talk about in detail if you're thinking about buying. So definitely reach out. One of the things I didn't hit on before was transition options for sellers who have to sell a house and then buy a house as well. There are some options there, and just know that we can discuss those in detail. So feel free to reach out anytime. My number is 720-289-0260. You can call or text me to that number. And my email is drew@drewshometeam.com. Thanks, and if you ever need any help, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm here to help you. Thanks. Have a great day.